May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So when I look at today's reading and remember St. Francis, whose feast day we celebrated yesterday, I can't help but recall that moment when Francis, still a young man, prayed in the little crumbling chapel of San Damiano, just outside Assisi. As he knelt before the crucifix, Francis heard Christ speak to him. Francis, go and rebuild my church, which you see is falling into ruin. At first, Francis took the words literally. He carried stones, patched walls, begged for supplies, and repaired that small chapel with his own hands. But in time, Francis realized the call went far deeper. It wasn't only about repairing bricks and mortar. It was about renewing the church itself, reviving faith, restoring love, rebuilding the community of God's people. That moment at San Damiano was a turning point. From a wealthy, restless youth searching for meaning, Francis became the founder of a movement of radical simplicity, poverty, and devotion to Christ. I believe that we can hear that same call as Francis. Go and rebuild my church. The question is, what does that mean for us here and now? How do we take part in rebuilding God's church, God's beloved community, in this present time? Well, I think the first step is to ask, what does it mean to live in community? Paul reminds us in Romans that we are members of one body, each with gifts according to the grace we've been given. Community is not uniformity. It's recognizing and appreciating the diversity of gifts that make up the body of Christ. Each member matters. Each voice has value. Each gift has purpose. Paul also speaks of transformation, the renewing of our minds so that we may discern the will of God. This transformation is not one and done. It is continual. It is ongoing, reshaping us into the likeness of Christ. And our gospel today teaches us that such transformation is rooted in trust. Seek first God's reign and God's justice, Jesus says, and all these things will be given to you as well. When we trust in God's reign, we also learn to trust one another. But here is something that I think we often miss. The Beatitudes, Paul's letters, the way of Jesus, none of these things can be lived alone. They are not solitary virtues, they are practices for living life together. And they only make sense in community. And yet, this community is not a closed community. As William Temple once said, the church is the only institution that exists primarily for the sake of those who are not its members. That is the paradox of beloved community. It is here and not yet. We live among it ourselves now, but it is always stretching outward. It expands the borders of who is included until eventually, in God's vision, all people are a part of it. So our life together becomes sacrament, an outward and visible sign of God's intention for the whole world. Every act of trust, every work of justice, every embrace of difference is not just for us. It points to the community of God that God is creating for us all. And yet here is the crisis. Too often, we do not take our baptism and what it means seriously. Baptism marks us as Christ's own forever. It calls us to see the image of God in every single person. And yet, we fail to live as if that were true. We see families torn apart by deportation. Black and brown bodies are dehumanized. We see LGBTQ and especially our transgender siblings told they are unwelcome. We see the poor, the unhoused, the hungry, and the sick pushed to the margins. We are also experiencing a governmental shutdown in which the administration can magnify its injustice and its cruelty, which is an increased impact on those on the margins. Presiding Bishop Sean Rose said not long ago that the marginalized must be at the very center of our life together and at the center of our message. And if they are not, then we have forgotten what our baptism means. And so in this world, we hear again the voice that Francis heard. Rebuild my church. What you see is falling into ruins. This call is urgent, too, because the church faces false idols today, just as Israel did in the wilderness. One of these is Christian nationalism, which is a perversion of Christianity. It is an attempt to equate the gospel of Jesus with the power of empire. It is, in truth, nothing more than the golden calf, a distortion of faith, a bowing down before an idol that is not God. And again, the voice comes, rebuild my church. We cannot forget creation either. As the season of creation closes with Francis's feast, we are reminded that the church is not only people, but all of God's creation. To neglect the earth is to neglect the body of Christ in its broadest sense. To care for creation is to rebuild the church. So where do we go from here? How do we rebuild? Well, I think the first thing is to live our baptism as if it truly matters. Living our baptism happens, as Arlo Gunthrie said, when we really take our baptism seriously for what it implies. It is then that we are continually transformed into living our baptism in community, together. That means seeing the image of God in every person. That means refusing to pass on the other side. That means caring for creation as a sibling, not as a resource. And I think the second thing is what Bishop Rowe has called institutional resistance. The church must be one of the few institutions left that can stand firm, that can speak the truth in love, that can resist the pressure to compromise our moral decision-making. Institutional resistance is making the living of our baptism concrete. This is what it means to rebuild the church, to live our baptism with courage, to resist falsehood and empire with faithfulness, to embody God's justice and mercy in the world. And this is not easy work. Baptismal living will cost us something. It may cost comfort, privilege, or security. It may cost us the approval of those who would rather the church be silent. But if we can do it, If we can live this baptism together, then we can rebuild the church as surely as Francis did. Then we too can embrace the leper, preach to the birds, and tame the wolf of Gubbio. And in doing so, we will be responding to the words Francis heard. Go and rebuild my church, which you see is falling into ruin. So friends, let us take our baptism seriously. Let us seek justice, love mercy, walk humbly, care for creation, welcome the marginalized, and resist the idols of our age. For then the work of rebuilding will not just be Francis's work or the church's work. It will be our work as well. And it will be Christ working in